Great to have you with us. And as I said, we're going through the Gospel of John and looking at these sayings. There's plenty of things that people say about Jesus. Some say he was a teacher, some sort of rabbi. Others say he was a prophet. Others say he was strange. He was a healer. He was some sort of lunatic, perhaps. Some people think that. Others say he was a very godly man, but not God incarnate. And then Christians, of course, say that he is the divine Son of God. God avatared himself in a human being 2,000 years ago to live amongst us. So there's a whole range, a whole spectrum of things that you can look at of what people say about Jesus. And that's been the case ever since he burst onto the scene in first century Palestine. However, what did Jesus say about himself? What did he have to say? How did he describe himself? What came from his lips to describe his ministry and who he was? What did he have to say about himself? And so we thought it would be great to pause our series in Acts and have a series in John for a while and go through these I am sayings in John. Jesus directly says these things about himself. I am the vine, I am the resurrection and the life. I'm the way, the truth and the life. I'm the good shepherd, I'm the gate or door. And last week we looked at I'm the bread of life. But tonight we're looking at the second of the sayings in John's Gospel. They come in this order. I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. Now, what did Jesus mean when he said, I am the light of the world? What did he mean by that? What does he mean by light? I mean, clearly it's symbolism, it's a metaphor. What did he mean? What did he have in mind when he was speaking to a predominantly Jewish educated audience? What were they thinking when he said, I am the light of the world? And what did he mean by world in the first century Roman Empire? John uses these words light and world in his writings. They're not just found on the lips of Jesus, but all through John's Gospel and his three letters, he uses the words light and world. So on the lips of Jesus and on the pen of John, what do these words mean? And what's going on with the debate in our second reading there, when Jesus said these words, I am the light of the world, there's this debate with the Pharisees in John chapter 8. What's going on there? How does that help us in our understanding? Why has John included the debate? How does it help us? And then in chapter 9, he says it again. Jesus says it again. I am the light of the world. But then it's right in the middle of healing of a blind man. Does that help us? Surely it does. Often these sayings are accompanied with miracles. When Jesus says, I am the resurrection and the life, it's at the funeral of Lazarus. And then Lazarus is raised to life. It illustrates the point somehow. When Jesus said, I am the bread of life, it happens around the time he feeds the 5,000. So here he says, I am the light of the world. And in the next chapter, he says it again, chapter 9, and he's healing a blind man. But there's some curiosities going on with the blind man healing here. I mean, Jesus heals a number of blind people, but he doesn't always, in fact, never in another case does he make mud and put on the eyes, like in this case. Why does he do it here? Why does Jesus make mud and put it on the man's eyes and then say, go and wash? How does that help us? What are we being taught there about, and how does it connect to Jesus being the light of the world? And why does he ask the man to go and wash in the pool of Siloam? Why doesn't he just go and wash? He could have gone and washed it in the Jordan River. Or he could have washed it anywhere in Jerusalem if there was a well or some sort of tap, a fountain or something like that. But he doesn't. He says, go and wash in the pool of Siloam. Why does he do that? So these are all the kind of questions I think one should have when approaching this text and unpacking it. So I've got basically three sections to the sermon, three headings. Just look at the terms, these terms, light and world, and I am the light of the world. Then we'll look at the debate, and then finally the miracle. Now, if we unpack it all, I hope we have a better understanding of what Jesus meant when he said, I am the light of the world. So first of all, light. What did Jesus mean when he said, I am the light of the world? Light and darkness are used a lot in the Bible. In fact, outside of the Bible, in other cultures, other religions, light and darkness are used a lot. What did Jesus mean when he said light? Well, light and darkness in the Bible, there's probably about 7 or 8 different things, at least, that light and darkness symbolise in the Bible. But here are the main 3. Good and evil. Good is purity. Good is kindness, godliness. Good is all things to do with being good. Light represents all those kind of things that come to mind. Perfection. Therefore, darkness is evil. Sin, corruptness, rebellion against God. Light and darkness represents morality, basically. Good on the one hand and evil on the other. And this makes it into kind of mainstream entertainment and storytelling and things like that. The good person is often wearing white and the villain often wears black. Luke Skywalker is wearing, well, beige. Light colour. Darth Vader is dressed in black. Gandalf the Grey goes from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. He's good, he's pure. And the Nazgul are black and horrible. So this whole kind of good, evil, morality, light and darkness, you can see that. The Bible talks about that. Light represents moral purity, goodness, godliness. Darkness represents evil, sin, corruptness. That's one way that the symbol of light and dark is used in the Bible. The next one is in wisdom. Light represents knowledge, wisdom, understanding, insight, seeing things. It makes it into the terms enlightenment. The Enlightenment was all about understanding and the age of reason and a new age of science and knowledge. Light in these terms, you often see in a cartoon the character who has an idea, a light bulb goes above their head. This all goes back to light representing an idea or knowledge, wisdom and so on. You might call someone very bright when they're intelligent. It happens to me a lot. So darkness then is ignorance. You're not able to see, you're not able to perceive, you don't understand. Darkness is unwise. So light and darkness represents a moral kind of thing, a moral spectrum of good and evil, but also an intellectual or wisdom kind of thing with knowledge and ignorance. But light and darkness in the Bible also is blessing and curse. So to be blessed is to live in the light, to have life and life to the fullest. Blessing comes with light. We get this lesson in Genesis chapter 1, don't we? In the beginning, there's sort of darkness, the earth's void, but light comes in and that signifies life. Life and blessing are very sort of connected in the Bible and relate to light. So light represents blessing and life to the full and happiness and joy, all of that. And that continues all the way through the Bible right until the end of in the book of Revelation. Light in the new creation and no need for the sun because light is all around and there's goodness and life and happiness and so on. Darkness then represents the curse, death. The Grim Reaper is dark. You get curse, darkness representing curse in the 9th plague of the 10 plagues of Egypt. Darkness covers the whole land. You get darkness when Jesus dies on the cross and there's an eclipse for 3 hours. darkness represents a curse. So these are probably the three main ways that light and darkness are used in the Bible. Okay, so that's light. What about world? World is this. On the lips of Jesus, and certainly on the pen of John, who wrote the fourth gospel, the world is in darkness. The world is a dark place. It's not living in the light. And therefore, if you keep in mind that right-hand column that I've just shown you, the world is essentially, at its core, an evil place. Now, we see good things happening all the time. We see morality being played out in both good and bad ways throughout the world. People do good things. They help other people. They're kind and they love their neighbour and so on. But at its core, the world is a dark place. The world is evil. It's drifted off course. Rebelled against God. We're in sin ever since Genesis 3. So the world is morally bankrupt. But the world is also in darkness in terms of its wisdom. The world is ignorant. It doesn't know, it doesn't understand, it doesn't perceive. Now again, not across every spectrum of society. Of course we know things. We understand things. We know about medicine. We know about space through space exploration. We know about what's going on under the sea through, marine biology. We know things. We understand things. But as far as spiritual things go, as far as understanding God and being able to have proper wisdom, the world is unwise, it's ignorant. And we're also cursed, we're not blessed. The world has fallen under a curse ever since Genesis 3. The world is cursed. And you know me long enough to say, I go on about this all the time. In Genesis, 4 things break. Our relationship with God, our relationship with each other, our bodies, and the world, the creation. All 4 things are cursed. We're cursed. And hence, death is haunting us all the time. It's a pretty sober analysis, a sobering analysis, that the world is evil, ignorant, and cursed. So you have all that in mind, and then you get to this words, I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. So if Jesus means light in those terms and world in those terms, he is saying then, by these 2 words that start the sentence, I am, he's saying, I'm the good one. In a world that is corrupt and evil and morally bankrupt, I am the good, pure one. I am the godly one. I am the true, kind one. I am the true, loving one. I am the only one who loves God fully and loves my neighbour fully. I am pure. I am sinless. That's what he's saying when he says, I am the light of the world. He's also saying, I'm the wise one. The world is in ignorance and living in an unwise course of life. But I am the true wise one, the one full of wisdom. I am the real enlightened one. It's not the Dalai Lama. It's not the Buddha. It's not Confucius. The true enlightened one, the one who has received enlightenment, is Jesus. That's what is going on in the text here. I know all things. I understand all things. I am the true wise one. And I'm the true blessed one. The world is cursed, but I've come in separately from the world to be a blessing. I am blessed myself, and I'm able to hand out blessing as well. So all of these are the ingredients into this simple statement, which isn't so simple, is it? It's deep, it's complex, it's rich, it's full of meaning and insight. Jesus is coming along, and this is the claim of Christians ever since, that he is the light in this dark world. All of us are essentially morally bankrupt, ignorant, and cursed. But Jesus comes in to this world to say, I am the light that everyone's looking for. I'm the light that can guide. In fact, if you put it all together, It is a clever way of Jesus saying, I am God. I am God. Because only God can be all those things. Can be the true wise one, the true pure one, the true blessed one. Only God can say these things. All of this is... The new atheists say that Jesus never came forth totally and said he was God. I think this week and last week we've already begun to see that these sayings are much bigger claims than first meets the eye. I'm the light of the world, saying I am God, I am the one. And he doesn't say I've come to show you the light, I can teach you about the light. He's saying I am it. When you look at me, you're looking at the light. When you look at me, you're looking at goodness, purity. When you look at me, you're looking at wisdom, knowledge, understanding. When you look at me, you're seeing blessedness, what it means to be blessed, and how you can get blessedness yourself. So there's the terms. That's the first third of the sermon. The debate. So Jesus says it, and then we've got the debate. The Pharisees challenged him. Here you are appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid. Jesus answered, even if I testify on my own behalf, my testimony is valid, for I know where I came from and where I am going. But you have no idea where I come from or where I am going. You judge by human standards. I pass judgment on no one. But if I do judge, my decisions are true, because I am not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. In your own law it is written that the testimony of two witnesses is true. I am one who testifies for myself. My other witness is the Father who sent me. Then they asked him, where is your Father? You do not know me or my Father, Jesus replied. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. He spoke these words while teaching in the temple courts near the place where the offerings were put. Yet no one seized him because his hour had not yet come. Now there's a lot in here, it probably deserves a whole sermon. But understandably, I want to sympathise slightly with the Pharisees, at least on one level. If someone comes along and goes, I am the light of the world, you kind of want to... The next thing you want to say in retaliation would be, back it up. Prove it. Are there any witnesses? If I came to you and said, I've just got back from climbing Mount Everest, you would go, whoa, can I see the photos? You would want some evidence. You would want the proof. Or particularly if I said, I am the best cricketing batsman in the world. Some of you might say, well, let's get you in the nets with Brett Lee and see how you go. Kind of like Piers Morgan. You want to see, you want evidence. Now there have been people over the years, over the centuries, mainly lunatics, who have claimed, I am God, I'm the Son of God, I'm the great prophet, I hear from God, and so on and so forth. But none of them seem to back it up. None of them seem to be able to prove it. They try sometimes by deception and all sorts of things, but none of them really prove it. So I understand why the Pharisees might sort of say, well, there's no witnesses. This isn't a valid statement because someone else has to kind of witness this. Our whole system of law and government is predicated on the fact that there must be another witness to this. And Jesus in parts concedes here. But ultimately he's saying, you Pharisees are blind to this. If you really knew that I was the light of the world, you wouldn't have to ask this question. And actually I do have a witness. I do have a second person, a third party in on this. And it's God the Father. The first member of the Trinity can verify me, the second member of the Trinity. If you want witnesses, I've got one. But because of who I am, I don't need to give you witnesses. But at least in part he slightly concedes. And we'll move now to the third part of the sermon, the miracle itself. But just before we do, have a look at verse 20. Chapter 8, verse 20. I'll read it again for you. I think this is right. I don't have the verse numbers on the screen, but he spoke these words while teaching in the temple courts near the place where the offerings were put. Yet no one seized him because his hour had not yet come. Why on earth did John include that? Why would John include these GPS coordinates of where Jesus is standing? Not just in the temple, but where he's standing in the temple, near the place where the offerings were put. And then he adds, no one sees him because his hour had not yet come. What's his hour? What is that about? Just hold those thoughts in mind as we move now to the third scene, or the next scene, the miracle. As he went along, he saw a blind man from birth. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. After saying this, he spat on the ground, made some mud with saliva and put it in the man's eyes. Go, he told him. Wash in the pool of Siloam, this word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. His neighbours and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, Isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was. Others said, No, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am the man. How then were your eyes opened? They asked. He replied, the man they call Jesus made some mud and he put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash. So I went and washed and then I could see. Where is this man? They asked him. I don't know, he said. Again, there's so much going on in here. I would love to spend a good half an hour in all the little nitty-gritty detail. Let me just point out three things. First of all, the blind man represents you and me. Most of these sick people that come to Jesus represent you and me and the problem of sin, whether it's a leper, a crippled person, even a dead person. Here, a blind person represents you and me. We're all in darkness. We're all cursed. We're all cut off from God. We can't see light. We can't navigate on our own. We're blind. And we're blind from birth. That's why this is kind of important here. There are other blind people that aren't blind from birth in the Bible, but this man, to really illustrate the point here, is blind from birth, as you and I are. You don't become blind in spiritual terms in the Bible. You're born it. We're born into sin. We're born into darkness. We're born blind like he is. The second thing from this miracle is that it totally vindicates what Jesus said. I'm the light of the world, here's the proof. It vindicates that he is able to give light by opening the eyes of the blind. Just as we'll see in a few weeks when he says, I'm the resurrection and the life. He raises Lazarus from the dead. It backs up what he says. He's not an idiot. He's not a fool. He's not a spindler of truth, as many people who have claimed to be these things in the past. Jesus is saying, I'm the light of the world and here's the proof. This vindicates him. But thirdly, what is this teaching us about blindness and Jesus being the light? Here we go. We're all blind. It vindicates Jesus. Thirdly, you've got to see the cross here. This is teaching us how you move from blindness to seeing. This wonderful miracle is teaching us about the cross. And to move from blindness to sight, you've got to see the cross. You've got to be cross-eyed. It's in the text. This man comes to, or Jesus and him meet somehow. And then Jesus covers this man with mud on his eyes. The mud is also representing darkness, sin, corruptness, blindness, ignorance. It's representing all of that. And Jesus could have said, go to the pool of Bethesda, which is actually really close to probably where the discussion happened. But he doesn't say go to the pool of Bethesda. which happens in John chapter 5, by the way. There's a healing at the pool of Bethesda. He doesn't say go and wash with just some tap water. He says go to the pool of Siloam. The pool of Siloam was here. This is a model of first century Jerusalem. It extends way beyond this picture, but this section is important to us. Here you can walk around it, the whole thing. It's in the Israeli Museum, the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. I'll be standing there with 25 guests in about 3 or 4 weeks. This is the temple here. Now remember, where is Jesus standing when he first said, I am the light? He's standing at the temple, right near the place where the sacrifices were. John specifically tells us this. He's standing right where the sacrifices were. And if you read a little earlier, it was at a time of year when there was this great festival. Israel had a number of festivals, still have a number of festivals throughout the year. The Festival of Tabernacles, remembering some component, some part of their history as they walked through the wilderness in the Exodus. So all of this is linked to the Exodus and how you move from slavery to the Promised Land. And at the Feast of Tabernacles, the high priest, along with all the other priests and musicians and people, would at the Feast of Tabernacles go from the temple and walk down this hill to the pool of Siloam, which has now been uncovered. Archaeologists found it not so long ago, in the sort of mid-90s. So I'll be taking people there as well. The pool of Siloam. And they'd fill a pitcher full of water. And they'd bring it back, and along with a pitcher full of wine, would praise God for the harvest and the goodness of the Promised Land that they were going to. Jesus says to this man, I'm going to put mud on your eyes, and then I want you to go and wash. And not to the pool of Bethesda, which is just over here, or somewhere else in Jerusalem, or down here in the Kidron Valley where there might have been some water or a spring or something like that. He says, I want you to basically do the path of a priest, the high priest, and go down and wash your eyes here. And remember, early on, Jesus began the whole I am the light of the world speech up where sacrifices were being made. The whole thing is getting us to see and make the connections to Jesus' death. His death on the cross. How do you move from darkness to light? How do you move from blindness to seeing? It's via Jesus. That's how he is the light of the world. He's the light of the world by dying for us and able to open eyes so that we can see. It's all connected to the cross. So John Newton is able to sing, I was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I'm see. How? How, John? How are you able to pen this amazing hymn? Well, because of amazing grace. Because of the cross. Because Jesus laid down his life for me, and his death washes away the mud, the dirt, the blindness from my eyes so that I can see. And I can move from darkness to light, and I can have true goodness in my life. I can be good. I'm equipped now because of the light. I can see. I understand things. I have wisdom. I have insight now because of what Jesus has done for me on the cross. I am blessed now. I move from cursing to blessedness because of the cross. That's how Jesus moves us from blindness to... That's how he is the light of the world. So where does that leave us? Well, for some of us here, I don't know, but maybe you're seeing this for the very first time. Maybe this is the penny starting to drop. Or, to keep the same metaphor going, you're starting to see who Jesus really is. The light is coming on. You're seeing for the very first time. Maybe that's happened to you reasonably recently, and the light is coming on more and more. For others here, that we know that Jesus is the light. But if you're anything like me, you still have a bit of mud in your eyes from time to time, a bit of dirt that cause a bit of blurred vision, a bit of uncleanliness, moving back into cursedness, moving back into ignorance and so on. And I need to keep coming back to Jesus and washing myself, bathing myself in him and getting the grime away and seeing things more clearly. And that's why our last hymn is, Be Thou My Vision. O Lord of my heart, naught be all else to me save that thou art. Thou my best thought in the day or the night, waking or sleeping, thy presence, my light.